Anyways, I think we should get started. I think we are very lucky ourselves today to be able to chat with Lance. Uh, Lance is like this highly celebrated and like long history. If you go on his LinkedIn, I think he has like more than 10, like he served as like the CFO and like, he's worked at KPMG, National Australia Bank, right? And been like CFOs to like a few companies. And right now he is like the CEO of Model Citizen, right? A fractional CFO firm. So he has like this great workflow for what he does for like his clients. But more importantly, I think we will just chat a bit about like what he's been like up to for like the last 20 years, how he's been caught up to like the frontier of like AI. And then after that, he will show us some demos, right? His workflows before AI, which I think is already like the top 1% of how people have been running things. And then like after AI. And then lastly, we'll just ask him like the most interesting question, which is like, where do we think things will go with AI? Like, where will the industry be in like 1 year, 3 years, right? And then at any point, feel free to pop up any questions. Happy to like just interject and answer. But also we will open up for like a Q&A after. And also just like those who stay, we will like share a credit, like a 1 month credit so that you can try out TabAI as well. So yeah, Lance, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, Andrew. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I've got a busy week, so I guess we've got this session, and then I'm doing the reverse. You're inviting you to our fortnightly Fridays Future of Finance Lab, which is a new initiative that we've got. So yeah, no, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Do you mind just walking us through like a bit of your history from like PwC, National Australia Bank, KPMG, being CFOs of like so many companies until today?
Yeah. Sure. So I guess I didn't kind of know what I wanted to do at school. I was unsure. At one stage I thought I'd become a doctor, and then I realized I had to be good at languages, and I wasn't that good at languages. I was always good at maths and science and sort of more the technical stuff. So I realized, well, actually, I don't need to become a doctor. I can just become an accountant, and then I can work in medical businesses. So I kind of realized I can defer that decision of what I actually want to do by just becoming an accountant. And so it kind of allowed me to explore so many different industries and gain so much knowledge. So I thought, well, the natural progression for any accountant is, let me go to a Big Four, right? That's kind of the stock standard approach. Go and do audit. Again, I'm auditing multiple different companies. Back in South Africa, I had IBM as a client. I had Southern Sun. I had Standard Bank, and I had Rand Merchant Bank. So I had, two major banks, an investment bank, and then also some tech companies and entertainment. And so from the start, I was always sort of diversified in terms of industries. And I think that's important because I think as my career progressed, that really helped with, where I was going. And then I immigrated from South Africa to Australia, through PwC. Again, always in audit, always in Excel, always using, tooling to make my life easier and quicker. And then it kind of really stepped up when I went to the corporate finance team in Investec Bank and started building financial models. And then suddenly I realized there's a whole new world in this analysis finance world that's not audit or backward looking, it's forward looking. And it's hard for people that are just grown up in that finance, compliance world where it's always backward looking, management reporting, to start to look forward unless you've had that experience in corporate finance and M&A. And I did a bit of private equity as well. So eventually when I went back into National Australia Bank and their finance function, I could see that most people just didn't have those skills in financial modeling. So I created Model Citizn almost a decade ago to try and do financial model building, education, and a range of other things. And so the journey's been quite adventurous because it hasn't been just one thing. But I've always thought about, how do I make myself more efficient? How do I follow technology? My late father was a technologist, and I started to play with computers before, portable computers when they were the size of a briefcase and they were small green screen. That's how long I've been using technology. Dial-up modem, I was the tech support at home when the dial-up went down as a teenager. And I used to play DOS games and and Space Invaders, on before even you had these visual graphics and 3D, acceleration, all sorts of stuff. So I've been around technology for a long time, and for me, it's always a good thing and an enabler versus a bad thing. One of the things that I see at the moment is just, lots of people don't take that same journey. So they're still stuck in doing things the old way. And so now you have this like really, how would I say, hyped up evolution in AI that's making that come to the front of people's perspective of, and also there's a lot of misinformation around what it does and what it doesn't do and how it works and all that sort of stuff. But people just think, oh, this thing can do everything that an accountant can do. And it can do some of those things, but not all of those things. And I think that's where the grayness lies. And I think that's important. But before we even started doing AI, we started to work on data, and myself working on data and data engineering and data workflows, Power BI, Excel, Mscript, these sort of critical technical skills that you kind of need to have before you even start to use AI. And now that we've got that, actually our use of AI is much more advanced and much more powerful because we have that structured foundation to use AI on top of, as opposed to relying on AI to give us that foundation. And I think that's where people are struggling at the moment, because like they want to use AI, but they don't have good foundations. And I think that's what's going to be difficult. And why I decided to launch this finance lab, because I think people need to go on that journey. We need to build and experiment, and we all need to learn together. But the most important thing is actually exploring what does that mean for the future of our profession. And I think it's exciting in one hand, but I think there's also a lot of people that are just resistant to change. They just don't want to. Power Query's been around for so long, and yet still not many people are using Power Query. And that's not AI, that's just an automation tool in Excel and Power BI. So I think, that's part of the journey which I want to take people on.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. Speaking of dollar, I still remember the days where the modem, right? And if someone picks up the phone, suddenly my internet just dies and everything. Yeah, those were the good bad days, I guess.
Yeah, no one was allowed to make a phone call when someone was on the internet. Otherwise, it took down the connection. It's just, I'd call them the good days, because I think life was a lot simpler back then. Whereas now it's just a lot hectic. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and I fully resonate on like education. I think I've been hearing this from like a lot of leaders of like AI inside like huge firms as well. For an example, the head of AI at Morgan Stanley was saying that they literally span out like training for like all their MDs, and they have people signed up just to make sure that everyone is like follow up. And I think that is like the biggest gap. And it's just so cool to see you like set up so much stuff just to educate like the community, especially on like the hype and like what's actually reliable. So speaking of that, right, I think I would love to see you share like your previous workflow prior to AI. I think it's super exciting, because I think you were like one of the most cutting edge like financial modelers I've ever seen. So yeah, if you want to just share screen and show us what you have before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone can see this. I mean, if you can take out tab, and it was basically that, right? So before AI came, that was kind of our workflow. So we're using a lot on the accounting system in terms of Xero, bringing data using the API endpoints with JavaScript, pulling that into Excel Cloud, which is an Excel add-in. And however, Excel Cloud has its challenges because it's only on desktop. It doesn't work on the cloud, and it's right now just connected to Xero. Now, there's lots of other tools out there that you can use. We just built it in-house because we saw the ability to leverage our own tech and scale it. Ultimately, we're going back to Excel. Why Excel? Excel's not dead. It's still the #1 go-to tool because of its flexibility and its knowledge. I guess with the advances in Excel with dynamic arrays and lambdas, that really changed our workflows. And so we can now publish, and for those that are on the call can come and join our session on Friday or Thursday in the US, where I'm actually going to demonstrate. I'm actually going to show this end-to-end flow live with an existing use case. And then pushing the outputs of that 3M model. And this is a 3-statement model. So it's an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, with actual data coming out of zero, with forecasts, with the scenario manager, with all the bells and whistles that you could get from a top-notch financial model. And then ultimately pushing that into Power BI. And people say, well, why would you go into Power BI? Because then it becomes restricted and all that sort of stuff, and it's not so dynamic and flexible. And that's right. But what also people want to see the outputs of the model, less so what the engine is inside. If you think about software generally, no one's looking at the back end, how the software was built. They just want to see what's the story, what's the visuals, how does it compare, what's changed, because not everyone is as technical as us finance professionals. So so that's kind of been our journey for the last sort of, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And I've used other tools instead of Excel Cloud. Before that, when I started Model Citizen, we had another third-party add-in, which we no longer use. And I think that's important. Like, ultimately these tools change and they evolve. And so, things are changing quite a bit, but the fundamentals are still there, which is ultimately your Excel, right? Because ultimately that is still the best tool, flexible, dynamic. And yes, there's many attempts to try and knock it off its perch, but I think it's just getting more and more advanced. And then of course Power BI is the whole data, because you're going to be limited by the capacity of Excel, whereas Power BI is a lot more. But then also we do other larger data projects. And so with Tab, I'll just go back in terms of where we are now. What I realize is that there's certain aspects of that model build process, not the entire model build process. I don't think that AI is good at building models from scratch in total, because of the context, the nuances, and all the rest. Right now, it's not, but it does help in doing other things. And I'm going to show an example shortly of that, where if it's commentary writing or analysis or adding structure to an existing workbook, it's great. And also multitasking, we'll talk about that in a second in terms of those other use cases. Still using Power BI, still pushing that. And yes, there's other AI tools inside Power BI and Copilot. And look, there's AI in all places. I mean, the session that we're going to go through for the training, we're going to cover Anthropic, Copilot, Gemini, Tab, and a few other things, and all of these elements of the finance lab. So when it came to TabAI, these are kind of the current use cases that I've got. So basic commentary writing, because you've got to go and you've got to look at the variance analysis. And back in the day, I used to write if statements with if it increases or decreases, and that's just more deterministic. But actually, I want to get a bit more flavor and a bit deeper, and so Tab was really useful for commentary. And that was kind of the first time that I realized, okay, this is something quite different. It's actually quite useful. That was before you released your agent mode, Andrew, and I was just using it. I think it actually was another tool even. Setting up basic structure quickly. So we get a client model, and they don't have any tabular contents. They don't have a validation check. So this Tab is really good at just setting up some of those things. Variance analysis, I'm going to show that shortly. Removing other tasks, mundane point to point. So if you want to write a formula and you want to repeat that formula or that logic across other sheets, and not every sheet is exactly the same because people don't necessarily structure it the same. Well, TabAI can help with that and writing some of those formulas and checks. Benchmarking and external data ingestion. So if I want to get financial information off the web, like PDFs of financials, I can dump it in and I can get all that analysis and benchmarking. For public information, definitely quite useful, as opposed to going through the whole Power Query, PDF, copy paste, all that sort of jazz. It's quite good. Multitasking whilst doing other things. I know we're all guilty of that. We shouldn't be, but let's be fact. We're all doing multiple things at the same time. Obviously the camera's here. I'm looking at my slides here, so sorry if I'm not looking at the camera. So I'm not doing anything else, but I am, and obviously talking to all of you. And then a quick summary on messy data. So quite interesting enough, we have now 70 people registered for our session on Friday. And I wanted to just sort of see where they're coming from around the world. Now, Zoom gave me a CSV extract, and I tried to load that straight away into Tab, and it didn't work because the data structure wasn't right. And that's not Tab's fault. That's just because, I understand that the data is quite messy. But when I opened it in Excel, then it was great. And it really did a great job, and then actually helped me to get some analysis and feedback on the participation, why they're joining the session, which country are they from. I try to do that myself, and it was very tedious and time consuming. And I'm actually going to go through that as another example. But yeah, so for me, it's just like really, really good to help on these tasks, which can sometimes take quite a lot of time and not add a lot of value. But the efficiency is huge, right? In some cases, 80 to 90%. Now I still need to go and check it and do other things, but ultimately it does make some of those things efficient. But I certainly wouldn't be using it for full model builds or heavy ETLs with tables. This is where the foundations are important, understanding, how to ingest data, how to manage, how to, shape it, and build those relationships and calculations. So any questions on that so far before I sort of jump into an actual example?
I guess I have one. Like you said, it saves you 80 to 90% of time. Like previously, how many hours would each of these take you, like in your day to week, month to month?
Well, but the commentary writing would be quite a long time, because it's giving commentary on a number of different charts and analysis. It would take probably half to 3/4 of the day, because I'd be writing a whole lot for a management pack, whereas that got crunched into an hour. Now again, it's an hour including me checking and changing and validating. So I've still got to do that, but it's just getting started, right? And I think a lot of the time, it's making sure that you have the discipline around it. I always say, outsource the task to AI, but don't outsource the responsibility. You still have to check it. And so, it's not about, getting 100% efficiency, because that's just not realistic. So I think, you will have a significant gain, and it also depends on the use case. The variance analysis, checking validation of errors, I'm going to do that now, because this took one of my colleagues quite a long time to do. So it took her an hour and a half, and in terms of writing the commentary. So this is a cash flow summary report. This is pulling data out of Xero through Excel Cloud, and ultimately then putting it into a cash flow summary. But now she has to spend about an hour and a half writing commentary on all of these, right? So rather than writing the commentary, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Tab to do that for me. So I'm going to open up my browser. I'm going to actually highlight. So again, the more you are specific when you prompt, the better. Don't just say, "Oh, give me variances." So actually highlight the section that we're talking about. So it's basically the variance and that section. I'm going to click here, use. So that's the section I'm using. Please write commentary on the variance between August and July, and explain your commentary through a validation. I'm not going to say validation, because it's a validation sheet, through a check and support sheet, which shows the basis of your commentary. Now, the good thing is, so I've sent that. I can go and I can work on another workbook, right? It doesn't lock up. It doesn't lock it up. I can continue working. I can come back. And so what I really like about it is just the ability for it to start thinking about that, assessing, giving steps, and working through all those different elements. I do have a completed version. The only thing I would say is, obviously, depending on your internet connection and how that works, obviously that can be quite a challenge, but hopefully we'll be fine. Generally, I'm not doing this, amongst a webinar at the same time, so it does rely a little bit on that. So yeah, so it's looking at that, and it's actually going to start setting up the steps and the flows. The other thing is, actually, you've got the different models. Actually, this is on auto. And if I change this, I know this is a recent, if I change this to fast, it won't break, but it won't change the model. It'll continue to use that, or do you know?
Yeah, it will continue running on auto until the next one. But also, speaking of speed, lightning fast is like 5 to 10x faster. Yeah. So we
So
can.
so I'm going to break and I'm going to say stop, and then I'm going to say continue. Please continue. So you might like go away or something. Please continue. I don't know if that's going to help. Well, that now I guess that will now use the lightning fast. And I guess the different models. And this is again one of the things that I think you've got to be careful what AI tool you're using, what engine is in the background, and whether you're relying on one particular model. So I notice I didn't say I guess I've highlighted those areas, and it's going to go through and actually create those different structures, and it understands that, and it obviously is going through those steps, and it will obviously create. I'll just highlight in the end. So there's no extra sheet at the back, but it should actually create a check sheet at the back, and go through that process. Was there a question that popped up? Did someone ask anything or?
No, I think the audience is good. Yeah, that's it. The lightning fast model is not as accurate, but we will see. The reason why we decided to release all these models, unlike Copilot and all, is we realized that a lot of our users are actually very technically savvy, and all of you actually want to try out all the different LLMs. I mean, there's a new one coming out every 2 weeks. Like today, GPT just released GPT-5 Pro. So yeah, maybe we'll add that in as well after.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, whilst it's working, and if it gets stuck, we can come back. One of the things that you need to do is give it some rules and memory in terms of what you want it to do in validation. So always want things to be checked and have error checks, validation checks when you're doing that analysis. Particularly, initially when I started playing with this, I was adamant to try to get it to work to build a three-way model, but obviously that does have a bit of challenges, as I mentioned. But adding those things to the memory, so you can actually give the tool a bit more structure around what it's doing. So it's added this cash flow variance analysis as well to this, and working through all of those elements and producing all of that. So like I said, it'll probably take about 10 or so minutes to complete. But what I might do is I might just jump to the completed version here, which I guess we can talk, and then we can go back and see if there's any open questions, and we can come back. So this is about multitasking, right? So even though I've switched workbooks, if I go back to that workbook, it's still going, right? You can see there it's already changed, and it's still developing that analysis. So I don't need to worry about losing track or locking up. I think many cases, some add-ins, they lock up that workbook and you can't use other workbooks. Tab doesn't do that, which I really like. So this was the commentary that was written by Tab, and this was the analysis, the variance analysis that it created. So it clearly stated the values. All of those were linked, all through formulas, not hard-coded numbers. And there's the variance. And then there's the calculation of the variance, again, all formula driven. Then, really adding some useful, notice how I use absolute value as well to look at the variance, positive and negatives, and then write the commentary based on that, which it then put into that particular column. So, all of these are quite useful, and then it actually shows the source and the logic, and whether it was going to be included or excluded, whether it was significant or not. This entire thing was done by TabAI, from scratch. It didn't. It was generated 10th of July, and anyway. So when I showed my colleague, who and I asked her, I said, "Look, how long does it take you to do this?" She said, "It takes about an hour and a half to do it." And when I showed her this, she was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." Now, she had to go through and still double check it. In the work that she did, she didn't put commentary on every line item. She only did ones of the major because she was trying to save time. TabAI did it for every single line item, and ultimately she can then go in and expand some of the specifics if she needs to. but it's important to have that structure in so that it can be more accurate and helps you to develop that. So yeah, any kind of questions or anything else from the group?
Yeah, Lance, I think I have a question just to get kind of your perspective. So like when you think about TabAI and where it will have like the biggest impact across, the FP&A function or maybe just the accounting finance function in general, like where do you see the biggest impact being? Is it like building management reporting packages, or like, integrating with ERP GL systems, or like how do you think about, where the biggest impact might be?
Dylan, it's a great question. I think that it's going to help in all of those areas. The thing that Tab for me is really different to sort of the Excel agent mode, for example. The Excel agent mode is a tool for everyone. Tab is a tool for finance professionals and FP&A. That's its vertical. That's why I've started to work with the team, started to really push them hard. I've given Andrew and Iris a lot of challenges around their tool and kind of particularly around the costing and the tokens and managing that, because of course that's important in finance. I think that they are going to go looking at the end-to-end workflows, and so I think it's going to have all of those aspects. So whether it's I don't know whether right now it can generate the full management pack with accuracy, so I'd say it wouldn't be that. But I think there's definitely the biggest impact would be with those that are willing to adopt versus those that are not, right? So those that are not willing to adopt will just stay where they are, and those that will adopt will suddenly have a boost of capacity to do other things. And so they will be able to do more things, have more conversations with humans. And so what it's going to do, the biggest impact is actually going to make us more human, make us less, stuck in our spreadsheets in doing things, and doing more and more. So yeah, it's completed. It's written the key findings, in terms of gross margin, cash burn, and the variance analysis, and it's added some of those aspects to it, and it's dropped in all of those commentaries on the major line items. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting place to sort of go to, and ultimately it's the leaders in the organization. I think you can't, if you're not going to work on process. So I think if you're saying, well, let's just put TabAI or any AI tool on top of pretty ordinary spreadsheet flows, then I think you're not going to get any benefit, and I think the impact is actually going to be quite bad, because what's going to happen is you're going to have situations where people are going to then say, oh, AI is terrible, it's never going to work. And what is actually the problem is not the AI, it's actually the foundations and the process and the engineering. So I think the biggest thing, it's going to actually expose more problems initially than actually solve them. And I think then we've got to step back and say, okay, I need to fix my workflows. I need to fix how the data is coming in. But eventually it will get better and better and better, but we're not there yet. Whereas I think people that are just sitting on the fence and waiting and not doing anything, I think they're just going to get stuck, because AI is not going to fix all your foundations for you. You've got to fix the foundations for yourself in order to leverage it and scale it. Does that help, Dylan? Explain a bit more?
Yeah, no, excellent explanation. I appreciate it. It seems like, this tool could have an impact sort of across the whole horizon of Excel users. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dylan. I think it does. I think it's also important to recognize that obviously their main focus is in FP&A finance, vertical, whilst it absolutely could be used in ops and marketing and other teams. I think their core focus on that vertical makes it more compelling, because there's no better supporters of a tool like this than the finance team. If the finance team don't support it, then marketing will use it, no problem. Ops wouldn't really care. Finance and accounting and FP&A have got regulatory duties on compliance. I mean, they can't afford to get these things wrong. Whereas I think in many cases, pretty much every accounting and finance person will know the challenge they have to do when they speak to sales and marketing, right? That's always, the numbers are wishy-washy, the growth's, all over the place. And, and so they would be probably more open to the vibe of AI as opposed to actually using it to really help with efficiency.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lance.
Adding on to that, I think the example just now, I think it could have been better. I think that's the difference between TabAI versus every other Excel app, which is we come from a team who spent like 5 years inside like Excel for like finance and accounting workflows. So actually that auto mode was like highly customized. We have like, 20,000 rows of like evals that we run behind to optimize like the whole prompt, the whole tool space. And it was like a long process of like science. But yeah, I think we should be more pay more attention on like the new models that comes up actually. Yeah. But I think James, you unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Lance, have you had an opportunity to use Copilot in Excel? And perspective on where Copilot falls down and TabAI, holds up?
So I recently used the agent mode in Excel Labs. There was so much I didn't get a chance to use Copilot in Excel, to be honest, but I saw so much backlash from the community. I didn't want to waste my time. So I think the challenge with Copilot in Excel is it wasn't doing sort of what people wanted. It was very invasive. It was hogging the mouse. In fact, lots of people were uninstalling it. MVPs themselves, and I had a more fundamental challenge with Copilot. It wasn't necessarily the tool itself. It's the fact that I didn't have the power or the ability to use Anthropic, and I was forced into using Microsoft's LLM, being Copilot / ChatGPT. So by the time that I made myself sort of AI literate, let's call it, because I'm I wouldn't call myself a specific AI expert, but I have been very practical in my use of different LLMs. I knew straight away that the LLM that you're using has a big impact on what work you do. And you can't just assume that ChatGPT or Copilot is the best. It's a known fact. Anthropic is better, but that's now. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe there's another LLM. So I wanted the ability to choose my LLM based on what was best at the time. So I did jump onto the agent mode, the Excel agent mode, which sits, but it again only sits in the web version of Excel, not in the desktop. 99% of the work I do is on desktop. So hence why I sort of, you've got to choose, like there's so much coming at us, thick and fast around new tools and features. And like, you've got to think about, there's only so many hours in the day. I want to take a strategic look at tools and there's some foundational concepts that I'm not prepared to give up on. So I don't want to be dictated to by a tool, which LLM I want to use. I want to be able to have that control. And that's kind of the issue that I had with Copilot in Excel, is that I didn't have that ability to choose. And I don't necessarily think that it was, at my level of expertise, I don't think it added a lot of value compared to Tab, which does. Does that help, James?
Yes, interesting. Thank you very much for that perspective.
I think it's a challenge. We're going to get hit by so many of these different tools. And, when I started Model Citizen, we used another add-in. And, you take a risk with the technology that you use, but at the same time, you can't continue to switch tools, right? Like, because at some stage, you're going to have to go deep on that tool, invest in it, learn it, and make sure that the founders behind it are aligned to what you want to achieve. If Andrew said he was, focusing on marketing and salespeople, then I probably wouldn't be using Tab, right? And so I think it's important to understand the ethos of the organization, where they're going, what are they doing. Please come join us on Friday / Thursday US time. Andrew's going to be talking there, and we're going to explore that a little bit about his view on where do humans sit in all of this space, which I think is important. Because I've seen lots of other competitors talk about, aspects of AI that are anti-human, right? And I really, really disagree with that approach. That like, oh, good luck, accountants, you're gone. That sort of rhetoric is really dangerous, and it's actually misleading. And so I caution anyone looking at a tool that starts to spew that sort of rhetoric, because if that's the way that the founder is thinking, you bet your bottom dollar that the way that the program is going to be created and designed is to effectively try and get to that endpoint. And look, honestly, we want to have a good relationship and a good working partnership with AI, not have a situation where I guess we find ourselves without any work. So I think it's about a joint collaboration as opposed to just one or the other. So look, I'll look at other tools. I'll certainly look at the Excel stuff when it comes out. But I'm all in on Tab, and have been for the last few months, and investing a lot into it because I'm getting returns, because I'm actually seeing the value. So I don't need to sort of justify it to other people, because I can actually see and it works for me, and it's been helpful in sort of my team, for me personally. And if another tool can do the same thing, okay, that's fine. But in the end, it's where do I put my effort, and how do I continue that path? How do I give feedback to Andrew and Iris on their tool, and to make it even better? And so we're talking about end-to-end workflows, where we can start to look at other aspects which the tool doesn't do at the moment, but could eventually. Eva? Eva, you got your hand up?
We don't hear you. I think you're muted.
No, sorry, it was by accident. Sorry.
Oh, I mean the other Eva. There's a Eva Tsang.
Eva Tsang.
Maybe she's fixing her mic. Yeah, but
Yeah. So look, I mean, reach out on LinkedIn and connect. I guess it'd be great to have some of you at our sessions, our fortnightly sessions, where we sort of going to explore this, but also don't forget the foundations. I think that's critical. The foundations of all of this is important, because that's where AI can really add value, in building on your foundations, building on that on that solid engineering, as opposed to assuming AI is going to be doing all your engineering for you. And I think that's just a very dangerous place to be.
I think also founders of Excel AI tools who spew that they can replace all humans is just very naive and don't come from the industry, solely because at the end of the day, Excel and AI is just a tool. At the end of the day, like the CFO and the finance job is still to understand the business, understand the people behind the business, and to actually give recommendations on that. And so I don't think AI in itself can just come in and just like give recommendation that actually is the best interest of the firm.
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. And I think that's been the challenge. I think if any of you have looked at recent online interactions on LinkedIn, Andrew and I sort of use our popcorn emoji, because it's like just watching this rhetoric be spewed and people react to it, and it's not helpful. In fact, it's quite damaging. And clickbait headlines and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, it drives likes, it drives attention, but not all attention is positive, and not all attention is good. And what does it actually mean to have a really good business? And I think if you trying to disrupt the customers that you're trying to attract, I think that's a really dangerous business model, and I can't see how that is even logical. But anyway, some of those founders want to spew that. That's their call. I just don't think that they're going to be able to embrace the world of accounting and finance, which I think is kind of, we're the gatekeepers, we have control. And if that rhetoric gets spewed continuously, why would we even go down the path of wasting our time looking at the tools that spew that?
Yeah.
Eva, I think you got your, or maybe it was a by mistake hand up.
No, I think she does. In the message, she's like, "Give me a sec." Maybe you rejoined. But yeah, just out of curiosity. Oh, Eva Costa as well, please.
Yes, please. So I have a question regarding prompting. What's your advice in terms of prompting? How you been evolving prompting? Because it's really probably the most important aspect when you are seeking input from TabAI. Thank you.
Yeah, Eva, that's a great question. I mean, prompting is a skill in its own right. And I think the first place you've got to start is to be really specific at what you want. More rather than less. I think the more variability you throw into a prompt, the riskier the outcome is going to be. And what I also say is ask AI to prove itself. Ask validation. Ask for, so everything that we should do is not just about getting an answer; it's actually validating that answer. The key thing here is, really understanding what it does and doesn't do, and there's going to be hallucination. So how do we limit that, or how do we reduce that? And so, it's not you can try one-shot prompting, which I know Andrew always tries to ask me to nail it, and it is a challenge. But I think it's so important to get that right, that balance right, in terms of, how you structure your prompt, what do you say, and iterate on that. So I don't have a secret formula. I think there's lots of, I think Andrew's shared a couple of stuff in the chat around prompting. It's important what you do.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of latest research on like AI agents that showed that it's less about prompt engineering, i.e. saying the magic keyword, but more about context engineering. What it means is, imagine you have like the smartest person in the world, but he knows nothing about your company, nothing about your workbook, nothing about your workflows, right? What information and context do you need to give them to help them solve your task best? I think that's like the right perspective. But yeah, Eva has an answer. Eva's typing. Have you used TabAI in predictive analytics? Do you use it as an interface for Power BI?
No, I don't. I've been a bit hesitant around predictive analytics for AI because it's a bit of a black box. Whilst it's useful for some context, when I'm forecasting, I definitely want to be, and I'm kind of more on the financial modeling as opposed to the data science world. So I think, if you're in the data science world, you're using predictive analytics, then you're dealing with a lot more data. And I'd argue that you're probably not in Excel if you're doing, really solid predictive analytics. And also, predictive analytics is very different to financial modeling in the data context, right? Financial modeling is, very broad, but the data is not very deep. So you might have, a chart of account level, which is like your revenue, costs, OPEX lines in your accounts. That's more financial modeling where you've got growth rates and you've got scenarios. Predictive analytics is now very, very deep. So you're probably at the transaction level, you've got correlations and data points, and you're trying to work out the coefficient of all those to build predictive models. Very, very different, sort of set of circumstances. Not to say that I wouldn't use TabAI to do some of that, but I'd probably do that alongside financial modeling and have both of those as opposed to just doing it. But I always want to be able to explain the forecast and the prediction and be able to explain that really succinctly. And I think that's where some of the challenges are with predictive analytics that's AI driven, is it is a bit of a black box and it'll come up with something. And then, particularly around the early days of some of these AI tools that were in Excel, there's a bunch of them. They just gave you numbers. I mean, even Copilot, ChatGPT, I asked for some numbers, I asked for a three-way model, and it just gives me numbers. And there's no calculations, there's no formulas, there's no, explaining things. I think one of the things that is very difficult, and, if you listen to Dario Amodeo, who's the founder of Anthropic, he talks about this a lot around safety and safety in AI. And what does that mean? And actually understanding what AI does and how it comes up with the recommendations that it has and what's the basis of that is actually very difficult. So how do you ensure that we have safety in what it's recommending and that it's not just telling you what you want to hear? I think it's the same aspect with regards to predictive analytics, because you sometimes don't know what is in the background. And some people might not care, and that's fine, and that's okay. And you have multiple methods of forecasting, predictive analytics, financial modeling, scenario analysis, growth rate, benchmarking. You can start to triangulate. I think that's a better approach rather than just using one. But like I said, I'm not a data scientist, I'm a financial modeler. It's slightly different, although somewhat related. So I hope that helps, Eva, sort of set the differences.
Yeah, she said thanks. Iris is asking, can you show us some of your secrets in your memory system prompt? So like inside the memory, inside TabAI, what are some things that you put in?
Sure. I'll share my screen. So I'll just expand. Yeah, so always check the workbook for any Excel errors. If there are errors, these need to be fixed as part of the workbook building process. Never leave those errors in the end result, and either seek clarification from user or look to resolve those errors. So it's important, right? Because there are going to be errors, and I want the AI to fix them or call them out or deal with them. I don't want to have to go and prompt it. So I said, no, well, that's important. So one is like finding errors and fixing them. Another one is actually including an error and validations check sheet on everything that is done. Particularly for a three-way model, a check for the balance sheet to balance, for example. Now, funny enough, I've yet to be able to get a fully balanced three-way model out of TabAI or any AI, because it just doesn't have the understanding of the complexity between the cash flow, the P&L, and the balance sheet. I think Iris and I were both on the same page and sort of saying to Andrew, come on, why can't you do it already? It should be able to do this. And it's really hard to code Python into this environment where it needs to understand all those different contexts and all of those different elements. So, a balance sheet should always balance and check to make sure there's a check sheet, horizontal and vertical addition checks. If revenue products over time, there's a check to ensure the totals by product equals the total by time period. These checks should be included in a separate worksheet. So again, giving it the specific parameters or within its Excel workbook creation is important. Always check numbers when you calculate them and never use hard coding. Show your workings always. And I repeat it always twice, because sometimes you have to repeat yourself. And let me say something that these options doesn't mean it's foolproof, right? It will still create stuff and it'll ignore it, or it'll do most of it, pretty much all the time when I create, there's a check sheet, which is great. So I think, it has got better, but it's not always perfect. And I have to go back and say, oh, well, you've got this error here. Or sometimes I just give up and I just fix it myself, because it's you get to this sort of circular loop sometimes where it fixes that one, but it creates a new one. And so you've got to get yourself off that sort of round robin back and forth, because that can sometimes, again, more time, your confidence will probably go down, where you say, okay, you've done your bit, AI, thank you, I'll take over from here. And I think that's what it means to actually work with it, where you recognize the shortcomings. You then, rather than trying to get to that end point, you say, well, stop, let me take over, and then I'll complete the rest. Because the responsibility still sits with me. It doesn't sit with TabAI.
Yeah. And speaking of balancing models, like Iris was saying, she used to TA like these Columbia University students, right? And 3/4 of them in like their homework still can't balance their models. So yeah, it's a hard problem to solve, but I think we can solve it in like 2 to 3 years, or like 1 to 2 years. Let's see. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Look, I was on a debate earlier this year, and I said, AI will be building models in the next 2 to 5 years. I gave a bit of a leeway, and I think it's probably less. I think it's closer to 2 than to 5, but I think it will get better, because the models will get better, the LLMs will get better, the features will get better, TabAI will get better, we will get better. I think that's the other thing. Like, we've got to recognize that these tools work and exist because of the human, and they will continue to be better the more we invest in how to use them better. So I think we will get there with a combination of human learning and AI learning, and working through those aspects.
Yeah, one last question. Given how AI today is like quite cranky at times, right? Like it hallucinates, it makes mistakes. What are some recommendations you'll give to other like, leaders or CFOs on like how they should approach AI? Because at the end of the day, this industry is one where you cannot afford to make mistakes. But AI sounds like it's rife with mistakes, but then also it sounds like it can help you 90% at times. It's like rolling a dice. So how would you advise like your fellow CFOs to like approach AI today?
With skepticism, I think you have to. I think the most dangerous part is assuming that it's going to get everything right. I think that's why for commentary writing and structure and some specific workflows, for really complex calculations, I wouldn't use it. So I think for really complex ETLs, when I'm extracting information from somewhere, I'm doing a bunch of Power Query and then I'm loading it into a table, I wouldn't use AI for that. I would use Power Query because I can see it, I can understand it. So I think there's areas that I would absolutely use it for, and there's areas that I absolutely wouldn't. And I think that's the secret, right? That's the secret that CFOs and leaders need to understand, that it's not fits all use cases. It's definitely different for different elements. And the sooner we get to understand it, the better we will be. I think the risk is that the leaders say, "Oh, we're going to just put AI onto everything," and then and everyone gets so disengaged. Number one. Number two, there's suddenly spewing a whole lot of errors in models and everything else, and decisions are being made that cause huge problems. It's going to happen. How did a lawyer stand in front of a court and prompt a ChatGPT for case law, right? We're going to have a similar situation in the accounting and finance world where someone's like, "Oh, this model was built and this decision was made and the model was built by AI," and no one bothered to check it, or no one bothered to actually think about that more critically. It's going to happen, and I think that's the risk as leaders. We've got to educate our teams. It is only a tool at the end of the day. Yes, it's a very cool tool that does some amazing things, but it is only a tool. And I think when we start to put more value on it than just a tool, that's when you start getting into a really dark place, and also a really dangerous place. I think that's where all the hype has been. All the hype has been on all of these elements.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, agreed on skepticism, but it also sounds like you agree that they should adopt it or else they'll be left behind. So it's like adopt it, but check it thoroughly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that it's just like any other tool. I mean, I'm surprised that people have not adopted Power Query as much, right? It's reality. People just don't want. I don't know why, but it's no different, right? It's no different. If you don't adopt Power Query, Eva, I'm just getting the link for you. I'll just paste it into the chat. We have to, because if we don't, another finance function will, and that's the issue. Is we want to become. It's a race to efficiency, and it has been for so long. But it's not all about AI. Efficiency is not just about AI. Efficiency comes in many different shapes and sizes. Again, AI is just another tool of efficiency. Like we are still going to maintain Excel. We're still going to use Excel Cloud. We're still going to use Power BI. We're still going to use TabAI. It's the combination of all of these things that make us efficient, because workflows are not straightforward, and they're nuanced, and they're different for different clients, and they're different for different accounting systems. And so how do we get on that journey and train and help our teams whilst at the same time being efficient?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much. I think we're at time, but I think people can follow you on LinkedIn. You've put it in the chat, right? You have something coming up this Friday. I'm very excited for it. Thursday in like New York time. Also, do you have any last words? Beyond that, like we have 1 month free of like TabAI Pro for everyone who just joined us. The code is October 6 AI CFO. Feel free to try it out, give us feedback, and see how you like it. See whether you are seeing what Lance is seeing in terms of efficiency, but also in like approaching it with like skepticism, and see how it works. Any last words before we say bye-bye and see?
Yeah, I think we ran out of time, Andrew. You were going to ask me a question around where do we see the future going and what is in store for us. And,
Yeah.
If I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, to be honest. I think if I have to have a guess and you'd have to push me for an answer, I'd say that we will start to see better models built with more efficiency and more accuracy over time. But I think we'll also see better humans and people that are more open, that are embracing, that are looking at this as a real opportunity to create that efficiency in the FP&A and finance team, because they're the one team that is just slammed every single month end, every single year end. Late nights working. We haven't really had that much available for those teams to gain such efficiency, because everything just goes back to Excel. So I think this is really exciting, and I think the future will be open to those who are willing to embrace it. And I think for those that don't embrace it, I think it's going to be even more difficult to get yourself a role in organizations if you don't have any AI experience. I think now that's going to become part of a finance professional skill set. Like, do you use AI? How do you use it? Where have you used it? I use 5 different LLMs, right? And I don't use it because I just want to play. I use it for particular reasons, that certain LLMs are better than others. Like Gemini is my go-to for image. It's just amazing. I got asked to prepare some photos for a mate of mine's 50th birthday, and there's a photo of 3 of us, me and him and someone else. And we've fallen out with this individual, and we're no longer friends with him. And I'm like, okay, I want to get rid of him in the photo. So I asked Gemini to remove it, and it removed it perfectly. An ex-girlfriend of his was in a photo, I asked to remove it. So, like, these things are just like, it's just so cool. I think there's other areas in our lives that we can use these tools.
Yeah. It's gonna be a very exciting few years. I always remind myself that ChatGPT was released less than 3 years ago. Look at where we are today. I'm very curious where we'll be in 3 years, given the advancement is sort of like exponential. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any other questions, I will send you all an email after of like Lance's LinkedIn. You can reach out to him. But also, thank you everyone for joining us.